abortion, child murder is unconstitutional. Today, on The Simple Truth, we consecrate everything to the Sacred Heart of Jesus through the Immaculate Heart of Mary and the pure, strong, chaste heart of St. Joseph. I'm your host, Jim Havens, and our guest today is Mr. Allan Parker, president of the Justice Foundation, thejusticefoundation.org. He's also the author of Reversing Roe v. Wade, My Journey with Roe, Doe, and God. And Mr. Parker received his J.D. degree with high honors from the University of Texas School of Law in 1979. He's also a former law professor. Very blessed to have him back with us today. Mr. Allan Parker, welcome back to The Simple Truth. How are you today?
Thank you very much, Jim. It's great to be with you again.
Well, I wanted to, I'm very grateful to be able to have a little bit of time here to dive into this vision proposal that you have on your website, a vision proposal for making abortion illegal throughout America. It says here that this document presents a vision for making abortion illegal across the United States. And I want to specifically dive into the coherent legal strategy that you mention here. In your view, what is the proper legal strategy to end abortion?
Well, it's an originalist interpretation of the Constitution and the two life clauses that are actually in the Constitution. So let me explain a little bit what originalism means. Originalism is a doctrine that says it's the duty of the courts to construe or interpret the Constitution according to the public meaning of the words in the Constitution at the time they were adopted by the people. And this is a just consent doctrine. That phrase comes from the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, and among these is the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But there's clearly a right to life. That to secure these rights, what right? The right to life, governments are instituted among men. So the purpose of government is to protect life, and then deriving their just powers, that is, the just powers of the government, from the consent of the governed. And when judges make up their own meaning for the Constitution, you have rule by the few, by an oligarchy, a small group of elites. But if the courts legitimately follow the meaning of the words in the Constitution, then they are following the will of the people, and that's a legitimate form of government. So there are two life clauses in the Constitution. Your audience may be very pro-life and they haven't heard that before. It's like it's been stolen from us, but we can put it in writing. We can show it to everybody. Yes, there's two right to life clauses in the Constitution, explicitly in writing. And here they are. The first is the Fifth Amendment. What does it say? No person shall be deprived of what? Life without due process of law. So right there is a written life clause. Now, since it says without due process, liberals have called that the due process clause for years. People may think of it that way, but it's just as legitimate from a scholarly standpoint to call it the life clauses, because life is in there. Where's the second life clause? That's in the 14th Amendment, which says, nor shall any state deprive a person of what? Life without due process of law. So there is a right to life twice. So the question under originalism is, okay, when was the Fifth Amendment put in the Constitution? 1781, about 15 years after 1776, when we signed the Declaration of Independence and said there's a right to life that's worth fighting for, which is a fundamental right given by God that nations are supposed to protect. And then the 14th Amendment says no state. So the Fifth Amendment says the federal government is not supposed to protect abortion. It's to protect life. That's what the words say. And then the 14th Amendment says, nor shall any state deprive a person of life, liberty, or process. So you have two clauses that require the federal government and the state government to protect human life. That's what they mean. And you can check that historically, but you can also check it that for 200 years in America, from 1776, so the 1770s to the 1970s, when Roe v. Wade came out and made up a right to abortion that's never been in the Constitution, for 200 years, it was a crime at the federal level and the state level to commit an abortion. Abortion was a crime. It was crime, It was child murder. And we're not asking for a new right. We're asking for a restoration of the rights that were put into the Constitution by the people, stolen in effect. It's a pretty strong language, but that's what they really did. The court ignored the written meaning of the words until really about 2020, when a majority of the court now believes in the concept of originalism, and it's their duty to follow the Constitution, not make it up as they go along.
Yes, excellent. Allan Parker is with us. And so, we talk about this a lot here, actually, and try to educate folks on this. We first saw this from the scholarship of Josh Craddock and also the scholarship of John Finnis and Robert George. Hadley Arcus has been in the mix. So, this has been around a while, but it seems like many of us are catching on, and then we're seeing it and we're trying to educate others on this. Because what does all of this mean? Well, it means that rightly interpreted, abortion, child murder, is actually unconstitutional. So that means it's illegal. It ought to be affirmed as illegal already by the Supreme Court and by the entire nation of the United States of America. So that's where we're at. Allan, when did you first see this? And can you share anything on that, I guess, when you saw it, and what your reaction was when you first noticed this?
Well, I didn't really begin to think of it seriously and come to the strong conclusion that this was right until kind of between January and March of 2025. Why did I ignore it for so long? I didn't hear anything about this when I was trained as a lawyer in law school at the University of Texas School of Law, considered one of the best law schools in the country at the time. And they just taught me what the judges had said about abortion. And I went to law school in 1974 to 76, and Roe v. Wade had become the law of the land because judges said there was a right to kill your child under the Constitution, under the Liberty Clause. But they were ignoring 200 years of history, and we were just taught that's the way judges act. So you want to be a lawyer? Follow the judges. And then over the last 40 years, really, there's been a significant change and a big debate among lawyers as to what's the right way to interpret it. A lot of time, Democrats say they're against oligarchy, but in the area of constitutional interpretation, they've actually favored the oligarchy of the court. They want a small group of people to create new rights that weren't intended by the people and have the judges impose them. Their definition of the rule of law is the rule of judges. But the definition of the rule of law is a written principle or a rule made by the proper authority before the matter comes into the courtroom. The judges follow the law. They're supposed to apply the law to particular facts. But if you want the judges to make up new rights, then you're really a supporter of an oligopoly, and you're an oligarchist. So we want to go back in the 250th year of the Declaration of Independence. We want to go back to those incredible words, not because it's just historical, because it's true. The founders, and I can quote some of the founders, they knew that life began at conception. But even today, science undeniably shows that life begins at conception. And the majority of biologists who were surveyed over 1,000 universities around the world, people think biologists are the most expert at determining when life begins. That's the study of life. And 96% of biologists say life begins at fertilization, when the sperm and the egg come together, wherever that happens to be today. Of course, in the old days, it was always inside a woman. But life begins at when the sperm and the egg come together. There's a beautiful video on a lot of the web about the spark of life. When that sperm and egg come together, there's actually a flash of light. So the Lord said, let there be light, and there was light. And he said, let there be life, and there's life. There's light when every human being is created. It's kind of amazing scientific truth today. But the founders didn't know that, but they knew what the Bible said, that God said, I knit your bones together in your mother's womb. And they knew that it was against the law even to hit a woman or a man who are fighting, and if it caused a miscarriage and a death, then death was the penalty for that. If it was less than death, and it was eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. Might be less damages, but it was always a crime. And that's what it was for 200 years. It should be a crime again. And there's better ways to help women that we need to talk about.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. And you've been great on that as well, explaining and proclaiming the harms to women, the great harm to women that is abortion, compiling hundreds of testimonials. Again, folks can find out more about you and all your great work over at thejusticefoundation.org. I do want to have you share with us a little bit about what the founders did say, as well as let us know what's going on there in the inner public entryway to the U.S. Supreme Court. I think this is fascinating. And also, we'll talk a little bit more about those life clauses when we get back. I think that's a great addition to be able to kind of rebrand those clauses, call them the life clauses. It's an easy way to talk about them. We're going to be right back. Stay tuned.
iCatholic Mobile is a proud sponsor of the Station of the Cross. What if your phone bill did more than just connect calls? What if it connected souls? With iCatholic Mobile, every text, every call, and every gig of data supports the Station of the Cross, keeping Catholic programming on the air. Nationwide 5G, unlimited talk and text, reliable data, and free roaming in Canada and Mexico, all on a network that puts faith first. More info at iCatholicMobile.com.
The Simple Truth. Jim Havens here with our guest today, Mr. Allan Parker, president of the Justice Foundation, thejusticefoundation.org. Usually when I talk about the 5th and the 14th Amendments, I go into maybe a little bit more detail that's needed right off the bat, talking about the due process clauses in the 5th and 14th Amendments, the Equal Protection Clause in the 14th Amendment, all of this showing that that every person has a right to life. And then we unpack that and say, well, every human being is a human person. That's a fact. And every human being begins, it's a scientific fact, not a religious belief, at conception, fertilization. And so you put all that together and it's very clear that abortion is unconstitutional. Plus, if you add in the original intent at the time of the framing of these amendments, and you go back to the founders, the framers of these amendments, it becomes very, very clear. And that's where George and Finnis have their avalanche of evidence in their amicus brief that they presented in Dobbs. It's all there, but I love how you take all of this and you pack it into just calling it the life clauses in the 5th and 14th Amendment. That's an easier way for us to then speak about it. Say, oh yeah, there's a right to life in the Constitution in the life clauses in the 5th and 14th Amendments. That's quick and easy, right? We can always go into more depth if needed when talking to somebody, but that's a great way to get started. Did you come up with that? Did you coin that? Did you figure that out to just call them the life clauses?
Well, I give credit to the Lord, but yes, I think I'm the first one that decided to do that. And I, of course, shared with other people, and in abundance of counselors, there's victory, the Bible says. And everybody sort of just clicks, because under the doctrine of originalism, which I certainly didn't create, each word has its own meaning. And so it's just as legitimate to call it the life clauses as it is to call it the due process clauses. You're focusing on due process at that point. So it's a legitimate way, but as far as I know, I was the first person to start publicizing it and amplifying it and using the term. Before, they'd always just been called the due processes clauses. So that's the traditional approach. And I support Robert George's articles and Josh Craddock, as you're saying, but this actually goes farther, and it's bringing it up to date, because the modern theory, which is now prevalent at the Supreme Court, is the correct one. But it took 40 years of fighting from the time of Ed Meese and Ronald Reagan and trying to get the right kind of judges educated to put on the court, that the meaning of each word was important, because the judges are supposed to follow what the people meant, not what the judges think. Well, what would be the best thing? Well, we think it'd be good for women that they could have a right to abortion. And the court didn't even know anything about abortion. There was a couple of states that were using it. They didn't know how terribly devastating to women itself. And they said in 1973, we don't know when life begins. So clearly, Roe was a horrendously bad decision, but now we can protect women better. Here's one why: because women can have the freedom of Roe v. Wade, not to parent a child without killing the baby and injuring themselves deeply. What is that remedy available in every state, from Massachusetts to California to Texas, everywhere in America? She can simply walk out of the hospital when the baby's born, or surrender that baby at a hospital or fire station within a certain period of time after the baby's born, and safe haven that baby. Say, I don't want to be a parent, or I can't be a parent, and the state will take that baby with no legal procedure and no emotional trauma to the woman. Even Justice Ginsburg said abortion was a painfully difficult decision for women. Why? Because women know and they feel that this is a human being, and there's a connection between the mother and the child. As a believer in the existence of God, I believe that's God-ordained design. Even if you're an evolutionist, though, if you think we've been around for 1 million years and the survival of the species, well, mothers who love their babies are more likely to take care of them, and the species grows. That's good for all humans. And of course, we believe there's a sacred bond of mother. And the founders believed in a sacred bond, that this right to life came from God. And they even considered things like the New Testament that says the baby in the womb, the child in the womb leapt. In John the Baptist leapt when the Holy Spirit in Jesus and they connected. I don't know all the spiritual ramifications, but there's a spirit that we know exists in life too, the Spirit of the living God. So I represent thousands of women hurt by abortion. And on our website, if you've been hurt by abortion, we have healing resources, and you can give your testimony in a confidential way that we'll use it elsewhere in court and legislatures to prove abortion hurts women. So it's unconstitutional to have a right to abortion. Abortion itself hurts people. There are many resources to help you. If you don't think you can take care of the baby, we want to first offer you resources. But if you just don't want to or feel you can't at this stage, surrender the baby through the safe haven law or traditional adoption. But don't kill the baby. Don't hurt yourself. What will happen to those children? Are they going to end up neglected in foster care? No, because there's 1 to 2 million women every year on a rolling cohort basis waiting to adopt newborn children, because we have another problem of infertility. Massively, 10% of American women are infertile under the scientific definition, which is the inability to bring a live child to birth after a year of trying. There may be different reasons for it medically, but if you've tried for a year and you can't bring a baby birth, maybe you had 2 or 3 and they just miscarry all the time, that's infertility. 6 million women a year have that problem. Several times they try to fix it. Sometimes it can be fixed. But after several years, 1 to 2 million women want to adopt newborn children. So we can love the baby, love the mother, and love the families that are waiting to love a child. It's the love, love, love solution. And that didn't happen, and that didn't exist at the time of Roe v. Wade. But all that exists right now as a matter of law.
Yeah, and one thing that's clear in the founders and the framers of both the 5th and 14th Amendments, when you read what they were saying at that time, their sense was very clearly that whenever you can first detect life, when life can first be detected, life must be protected. And that's very clear. Now, we have the technology today to detect life at the very beginning of life, when each of us began at conception, fertilization. And so from that point, life must be protected. This is common sense, and our founders got it. We seem to have lost it, but we need to get it back. And so we very much appreciate good lawyers like yourself, Mr. Allan Parker, advancing these arguments. Thank you so much. And it's exciting to see what you have here. I'm looking at photos right here of the inner public entryway to the U.S. Supreme Court. And what is going on here? They seem to be highlighting on display those 2 life clauses right next to each other from the 5th and 14th Amendments in this display. When did this display come about? Do you know who's behind it? It seems like they're pointing us right to these life clauses in the display in this entryway to the U.S. Supreme Court.
Yes, thank you so much for directing people to our website where they can see these pictures for themselves, get these quotes that we're going to go into, and they can actually sign themselves a declaration that there is a right to life in the 2 life clauses in the Constitution. So I hope that some of your listeners will go there, study the issue as I did, because I admit I'm pro-life. I believe life should be protected, and it's an injustice of the worst kind to kill any human being without due process of law, without a major reason for killing. Let me just say that while we're thinking about it. What does the due process clause require? Can you kill a child at 14 weeks or 15? Well, let's just think about that due process clause for a human who's born. In order to put them to death, they have to commit a terribly heinous crime. They have to be proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt by a unanimous jury, and they get a court-appointed lawyer to help protect their life and their right to life. We don't do any of that for children in the womb. That's why the only really other exception or reason why you might allow an abortion, not to kill the child, but to save the life of the mother, if that's necessary, because then you have a duty to protect both lives, because the Constitution protects the life of the mother and the life of the child in the rare circumstances where there's a life-to-life conflict. But that's not why most abortions occur in America. So what did the founders say? And you talked about the walls of the Supreme Court. When I began fighting Roe v. Wade, and I represented Norma McCorvey, who was the Roe of Roe v. Wade, and Sandra Cano, who was the Doe of Doe v. Bolton, starting in the year 2000, in their legal efforts to reverse their own cases. And when I've written a book, which you can get on our website also, called Reversing Roe v. Wade, my journey with Roe, Doe, and God. And Roe and Doe were Sandra and Norma, and the testimony of women hurt by abortion. Everything I know about abortion came from about almost 5,000 women's testimonies we've collected in legally admissible form. You can give us your testimony on the website. But when I started, when you went into the Supreme Court, there was a huge tribute to the building of the Supreme Court, and they called it the Temple of Justice. And in 1935, it got its own building and became really the supreme judge. And the judges even wrote, "We determine what the meaning of the Constitution is." So it really meant anything they went. And from about 1920 to 2020, when President Donald J. Trump put the third of his 3 justices on there, Amy Coney Barrett, the judges thought they could make up whatever they wanted under the Constitution. Now, 6 judges altogether, it's not that they're loyal to Donald Trump, they're loyal to the Constitution, and they're loyal to the people. They want to follow the Constitution according to what the people meant. But before, it was a temple of justice. So in November 23, I'll give you a short story on prayer, because prayer is very important. And please, you can sign up on our website. There are prayer points to pray for the Supreme Court to find this right to life. So in November 2023, before the election year, we began to pray that the Supreme Court would find this right to life in the Constitution, that they would proclaim it and then apply it in a particular case or controversy. Well, sometime in 2024, that prayer was actually begun and came true. They removed all of the stuff about the Temple of Justice, and then they put up on the walls of the Supreme Court the 5th Amendment and the 14th Amendment, which I've quoted to you, and it's in big, bold letters in the public hallway. And they say it's our job to follow those words. So they're proclaiming the right to life in the courtroom.
Phenomenal. Allan Parker, again, you can go to his website, learn more, everything that he was talking about there. You can find it all on the website, thejusticefoundation.org. Also, his book there, Reversing Roe v. Wade, My Journey with Roe, Doe, and God. And certainly, we know that this audience is praying and will continue to pray for the end of abortion, and specifically for the Supreme Court justices to do their job and affirm the right to life for all preborn children from when they begin, when we all begin at conception, fertilization. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the The Simple Truth. Jim Havens here. Mr. Allan Parker is with us, thejusticefoundation.org. All right. Allan, tell us about what the founders did say. I think, sadly, we don't get taught this very much anymore about our founders. May not even know the names of guys like James Wilson. But yeah, share with us more.
All right, great. Because this isn't just my idea, and it's not, it's not a good idea. It was the founders' idea, and it's in the history books. So I'm going to read some quotes. So we now know there's 2 life clauses. No person shall be deprived of life without due process of law, nor shall any state deprive a person of due process without law. The 5th and the 14th Amendment. What did the founders mean? Let's go to the first one, the 5th Amendment, and I'm going to read from James Wilson. He was one of the founders who signed the Declaration of Independence, which has a right to life in it. He signed the Constitution, which at the time they sent it did not have a right to life in it. But the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments, including the 5th, had to be ratified so that the people would adopt the whole Constitution. And what's in the 5th Amendment? The right to life that was in the Declaration. So he was one of the signers of the Constitution. And then he was appointed by George Washington to be one of the first Supreme Court justices. So he was on the court. He was well known. He started writing and giving lectures about the law at the time, and they were put into a book. And here's what he said. Now, the question is, did life begin at birth, or did they think life began in the womb? Here's what he says. With consistency, beautiful and undeviating, human life, from its commencement, which means beginning, to its close, is protected by the common law. That was the law that was in every state, whether there was a statute on it or not. In the contemplation of law, life begins when the infant is first able to stir in the womb. By the law, life is protected not only from immediate destruction, but from every degree of actual violence, and in some cases, from every degree of danger. They even had child endangerment statutes. And so this is just amazing. When did it begin? In the womb, from the beginning. Now, here's another example. This is from John Witherspoon, who was later became was a teacher to many of the founders and taught at the University of New Jersey, which later became Princeton. He said, in America, we have denied the power of life and death to persons, to parents. Now, what does that mean? Well, under paganism, like the Roman culture or the Greeks, they could give their wives an abortion-producing drug or put the live baby after birth outside for it to be destroyed. And they had the power of life and death over the child. What is abortion? It gives the power to the mother, basically, or the mother and the father today, to kill their own child. And he says, our law never intended that. The Constitution didn't intend that at all. And so it's against the Constitution. And then here's what another one says. Did they have legal rights in the womb? This is a little bit later. This is James Kent, and he wrote a book in 1820s. So that was shortly after the 5th Amendment and expressed the law of the day. And it was before the 14th Amendment, which relied upon this. And he said, whenever such consideration would be for his benefit, a child en ventre sa mère, which means in the mother's womb, is considered as absolutely born. So he had all the rights in the womb that he would have after he was birthed. And that had to be clarified a little bit. So clearly, all the founders, all the legal scholars, all the states made it a crime to have an abortion because they protected life. If they meant life to not include children in the womb, they'd have actually had to say that. Well, there's a right to life in the Constitution, except for children in the womb. And what was their definition for a pregnant woman? She was a mother with child. They didn't use pregnancy. They said, oh, she's with child. So it is absolutely undeniable that the Constitution, both the 5th and the 14th Amendment, ban abortion and to require the government. Now, sometimes people say, oh, well, the government only forbids state action. Well, all of these laws in the states that are pro-abortion are state action. A law is the epitome of state action. We're creating a law that says you can abort or kill a child up to the moment of birth, or whatever that state happens to state. But that is unconstitutional. And I believe with enough of an education campaign, this history has been stolen from us. And I believe during the next year, the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence and the foundation of our government and what the Constitution meant and how unique and special it was. We were the only government in the world created with the idea that each of us was so unique, created in the image of God, that our life could not be taken by the government. It was an inalienable right. We could not even agree to kill ourselves because that right to life came from God. That's one of the reasons they made suicide illegal. It was just amazing when you study this. And I hope everybody will go to our website, get some more evidence, and help spread this word. You can sign a declaration now, and it's only about a page and a half, summarizes his arguments, have some of the quotes. You can sign it, you can share it, you can become a declaration, just like our forefathers signed the Declaration of Independence. And instead of using whereas clauses, we say, we declare these truths to be true, and we put them all in. And, the court doesn't bow to public opinion, but it does want to know, I believe, that this is honest, it's true, there's sound historical research for it. People that they respect and admire believe, yes, this is the truth. This is a logical way to do it. And they want to know that there'll be some other alternative for women. Just as a practical matter, that's the safe haven law, which Justice Amy Coney Barrett mentioned in her oral argument. And the New York Magazine attributed that to our brief and one other brief that brought up the safe haven argument in the Dobbs case. So we've been very blessed by God. We exist on donations. We present all this evidence and represent all these clients. We represent thousands of women hurt by abortion in amicus briefs at the Supreme Court. We do all that at no charge to the clients. And we have legal tools that you can use to educate people and legal tools to stop forced abortion. As we began to collect the evidence from women of how abortion hurt them, we began to find out that one of the ways that abortion hurts women is it allows other people to force women to have an abortion. And the mechanics of abortion pill distribution make it even easier. A doctor in Ohio recently had his license suspended for giving his girlfriend abortion pills and using her name to get them online. But any man, he used a woman's name. You can use your own name and get these pills and give them to your girlfriend. Now, that's a crime in every state in the union. And we have evidence to show that and some forms there that you as a private individual can share with high schools. Parents can't force a child to have an abortion. And we were blessed just this past weekend to coordinate with another pro-life group in Florida to stop a forced abortion in Florida. And so we save about 1,000 to 2,000 years of babies a year. We conservatively estimate by working with pregnancy centers and lawyers, a network of lawyers across the country.
Excellent. Allan Parker is with us. And and what all of this means with respect to the Constitution is that, look, this is not as difficult as many have thought for many decades, thinking we need to have a new human life amendment, which is a very heavy lift to get a new amendment passed and ratified. Instead, actually, it's already in the Constitution. We just need to get the Supreme Court to get the question narrowly before them, where they have to rule on this question. And we think with the current makeup of the court, they're going to get it right. So I guess back to the proper legal strategy, Mr. Allan Parker, what are your thoughts on how to get this actually before the Supreme Court to have them rule on it?
Well, there's any number of cases that could be the one that forces this issue. It could be suing one of these state pro-abortion laws that give a right to life up to a right to abortion. The right to kill, it gives the right to parents to take the life of their own child up to the moment of birth. That's clearly unconstitutional. Or it could be a federal law protecting children that the other side sues on, and the federal government could defend it on the grounds we have a duty under the Fifth Amendment to protect life. For example, the Comstock Law right now is a federal law passed in 1873, I believe is the right date to that, around the time of the 14th Amendment, that they made it a federal crime at the federal level, effective all over the United States, to send abortion-producing drugs through the mail or common carrier like FedEx or FedEx or Amazon, those, anything that you can put shipping on and send around, that's a common carrier. Anybody can use it. So why did they do that? Because they had a duty to protect life. They had control of the post office and over interstate commerce. So where they had the authority, they made it a federal crime. That is still the law. And one state, Louisiana, has already sued them. And another state, Missouri, just sued them for not enforcing the federal law right now. And I think we'll see that case will go all the way to the Supreme Court. So we have some prayer points. It could be that case. It could be another case. There's no lack of cases. As long as we're killing the children, there's a lot of ways to bring it. In fact, I'll tell you something I discovered in my results and in my historical research. Standing is an important issue today. You have to be directly injured. Well, the person who's most directly injured is the child. But under Roe, the court said, well, they have no rights. They can't have standing because they said you can be killed. And so they rejected standing. But Blackstone, who's another famous legal authority from those days, just echoes Kent when he said, whenever it's to the child's benefit, even in the womb, we'll give him the right. Well, he had the right to have a guardian even when he was in the womb. So we can have guardians appointed for the children in the womb that would be killed and protect them. And I think some of those parents who are waiting to adopt children would be great guardians for those child, and to be able to say, hey, we'll not only prevent them from being deaf, but we're willing to adopt that child. So we'll help the mother out if she's not ready to have a child. We would love to take care of that child, and they'd be someone who'd already been vetted by adoption agencies as a fit parent. So I think that's the love solution that we're working to. I believe we're in the midst of a great legal and spiritual revival. People are turning to Jesus Christ. They're turning to God. Jesus is the Prince of Life, and we need to honor him. We need to be willing to sacrifice our lives for others. But we have a law that says a woman doesn't have to sacrifice for her life for her child. Safe haven law allows her to give the child to the state. In fact, legally, here's the thing. You can use this as an argument. There are no unwanted children in America. Why do I say that? Because every state has a safe haven law. And they say, we will take your children. We want the children that you don't want. Give us the children, and we'll give them to the loving home waiting.
Yes.
Thank you, Jim.
Many great points here with Allan Parker. Wonderful stuff. Again, the Justice Foundation, thejusticefoundation.org is the website. Really appreciate your time today, Allan. Thank you so much. Everybody pray for Allan Parker, for him and his family, for his good work, all other good lawyers that are doing this work. We need to advance these arguments. We need to pray and we need to work until abortion is abolished, child murder is abolished as it ought to be. This is common sense. All right, let's get it right, and let's do it in time for, let's do it immediately, but certainly next year, the 250th birthday of our nation. Let's pray, let's work. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. Welcome back to The Simple Truth. Jim Havens here, and I do want to open up the phone lines here. We've got a final segment here, and open forum. We'll see what God wants to bring out. But if you have a comment, a thought, a question, anything that you want to bring forward, now's the time to do it. 1-877-511-5483. That's 1-877-511-5483. And also, I'll let you know that if you are buying or selling a home, there's an easy way to help the Station of the Cross cross at the same time. Real Estate for Life has 1,400 experienced, morally grounded agents in the U.S. and Canada. Visit realestateforlife.org to find a Christ-centered experienced realtor near you. And don't forget to mention the Station of the Cross. Also, let's not forget about iCatholic Mobile for your mobile phone needs. When you subscribe to iCatholic Mobile, you do help fund the Station of the Cross. Check out iCatholic Mobile, iCatholicMobile.com. All right, I love conversations like we just had today with Allan Parker of the Justice Foundation. Again, just incredible stuff. And so you see the lights are coming on for folks. The prayers are being answered. The lights just came on for him regarding these the fact that abortion is unconstitutional, the fact that we have these clauses in the 5th and 14th Amendments, these life clauses, and so he's seen this just in the beginning of 2025, and look at what the Lord is doing for him, giving him this idea to kind of rebrand these clauses. We can call them the life clauses in a simple way. Yes, we can, absolutely. Life is actually right there in both of these amendments, and yeah, just like due process is, if you can call them the due process clauses, we can also call them the life clauses. That's an easy way to speak of them. I do recommend, if you're as crazy as me, I guess, having a pocket constitution that you carry around with you. And I've done that because once I started getting questions from people about the 14th Amendment, I'm like, it would be very helpful if I had the text real quick where I can just show them, specifically about the question where in the beginning, the first sentence is talking about a definition of citizenship, and then it goes on to be expansive and goes beyond citizenship and talks about all persons. So you can see that very clearly in the text when it's pointed out to you, but sometimes people think, well, this is all just about you have to be a citizen. That's what it means. No, it's very clear in the text that it's expansive. It talks about that narrowly first, and then it expands out to talk about all persons having equal protection and due process. And what is it talking about here? It's talking about nor shall any state deprive any person of life, right, without due process, and there's equal protection of the laws. And so it's all right here. Thanks be to God. So we've got these things. The Lord is answering prayers. Things are moving. Things are happening. Robert George was listening to a talk, a little presentation he was giving recently, an interview, I guess, that he was having at a conference. He made a great distinction that I really liked about the difference between optimism and hope. He's saying, look, optimism, it kind of has in there optics in the word. It's like sometimes you're seeing things, it doesn't seem too optimistic, right? He says, I'm not too optimistic right now about a lot of things, right? It doesn't look so good, right? But I am hopeful. Right? We do have the virtue of hope, the theological virtue of hope infused into us at our baptism. And yeah, just the natural virtue of hope as well. But that theological virtue of hope is directed towards eternity. And that thing, God's going to answer some prayers. Things are going to move. Some great things are going to take place. Even if it doesn't seem like it, we can pray. We can keep working. We don't give up, and we are hopeful. And that's the way we have to be, even if we're not too optimistic based on the current optics. I think that's a very helpful distinction to exercise our fortitude as we keep going in this fight. We're going to get there. We're going to get there. Child murder will once again be illegal in law and unthinkable in culture as it ought to be. And people are going to look back and think, what in the world were they thinking back then? But we've got to do the work. We've got to do the prayer. This is the time. And so I guess since we do have a bit of extra time here, I mean, I was hoping we scheduled Mr. Allan Parker for the entire show, but he's a lawyer. He's got things going on. He had to run. So we've got a little extra time here. So I guess I'll just share a little bit of what's, I guess I want to ask for your prayers, just like I'm saying to pray for Allan. I could certainly use your prayers and my family and the work that I'm striving to be faithful for here. I hope that you would keep me and my family and the discernment and the good work in your prayers. And I need them because there's some big discernment going on for me. Basically, several months ago, this discernment rose up kind of out of nowhere. This idea of the Lord possibly calling me to law school seemed quite crazy at the time. I'm 48 years old. I've got 6 kids. How in the world could that work? And why, right? But I stayed prayerful about it, kind of did the due diligence, thinking, I doubt there's anything here or that doors will open here, but kind of moved forward in it just to see. Took a little diagnostic test of the law school exam, the LSAT, and did well on that. So I'm like, okay, maybe I can study a little bit for this on the side, take the actual test, and if I do well, maybe that'll open doors. We'll see what the Lord does. And by a miracle of grace, was able to do some studying and do very well on the LSAT. Better. Well, I was hoping I would do well. I was hoping I would maybe even do a little better. Ended up getting a 170, which I thought that was really great for me, and does open doors to what we would need, which is some pretty good offers from some good law schools that would we can't be going into debt over this, right? So the Lord would have to open doors on that, and it seems like He has. So I applied in September. We're starting to look at offers now for law school in the fall of 2026, and so it seems like things are lining up, and that we will have a full scholarship with regard to tuition. Some other things have to work out by God's grace, but anyway, doors are opening there. I'm open to walk through them. There is a strong conviction in my heart that it does seem like God is calling me in this way, and for what exactly precisely, I'm not sure, other than to dive into this fight within the legal system and apply myself to it to the full, try to become the best possible lawyer I can be in order to fight this from the inside in the legal system, because again, it's all common sense, and it's there from our very founding. It's there in the Declaration. It's there in the Constitution. Sadly, we just are in a time where there's evil ideologies that are perverting the minds and hearts of many, and perverting our founding documents and what would be common sense law. Law is meant for the common good. There is nothing that is about the good. There is nothing about the common good regarding child murder and abortion. We're killing our children here in our nation. Thousands every day. A 9/11 in terms of loss of life every day. This ought to be alarming to us. This cannot stand. So, look, I've been talking a lot about it. I've been trying to do what I can by God's grace. And it seems to me that the next step here and what God is asking of me, and I just want to do God's will, is to, walk through that door if He's opening it and if He's calling me to. And so I just ask for your prayers on this, for the discernment on this, but it does seem like it's lining up for law school for fall of 2026. So pray that I make the right decisions here and all the little things that God wants me to do, exactly what law school to go to. I've got some very good ones high up on the list that I have as favorites, and we'll see how it all shakes out. But your prayers are very, very helpful in this time. So thank you for that. So I think we're getting close to the end here. Doesn't look like we got a call in, so nothing pressing from you today, but that's all right. I just want to say thank you for all that you do, for listening to this show. It's not always pleasant content, right? We're talking about hard things that many people, they just find it a whole lot easier to look away and just forget about it. And you choose to look at it. You choose to face the hard reality because it's true and it's real and it's going on, and we have a responsibility actually to look at it and to face it and to take responsibility for our role in striving to end this in love, as Allan was very clear about. We need to love. Absolutely, that's what this is all about. It all flows from love Himself, God Himself, right? Who lays down His life for us. Jesus, thank you, right? Are we willing to lay down our lives for one another? And what role? How can we do that to end child murder in our nation? God bless you all.